You guys really awesome. Like I said, too, we go over 50,000 subscribers this last week. Not even WIP and 97.5 have that on their viewerships when it comes to their channels and such. And we really appreciate that. Again, you guys, thank you so much for all the supers, man. I mean, yesterday was insane. And I mean, just absolutely awesome. And we had like 50 new subscribers yesterday as well. So every Tuesday we'll be giving that away. All Eagle merchandise, and we appreciate it. Well, here's been my take before I bring Marcus Hayes on. I loved talking to him last time that he was on. For the entire season, the passing game has not been where it needed to be. The 60 minutes of football eradicate that. And now you look at them and say, okay, well, this is what they can do. Or do you think this is now going to be a trend moving into the December months? Because before I bring Marcus on here, the next loss the Eagles have might end their season. I mean, Washington, your favorite in, and the remaining ball games, if you do lose, the next game maybe end your year. Do you believe that it's been fixed? Shady McCoy said something today, and I reached out to Shady, and Shady confirmed he said this. So let's bring in our friend from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Marcus Hayes, who's on the road with us right now. Marcus, I appreciate it, man. Happy holidays to you, my friend.
Happy holidays, Dan. How are you?
Shady McCoy said something interesting. He said that this is the greatest Eagle team that he has ever seen in his life. Do you agree?
No.
Is there one that separates it, or is it, again, because the 17 team obviously is a Super Bowl champion, and what the 22 team did, and maybe even the 04 team, in your opinion, I mean, I think it's two different conversations, right? They didn't live up to the expectations, the 04 team, and the 22 team played against a generational talent. I'm thinking you're leaning on that 04 team. Is that right? When you thought that best Eagle team you've seen?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the expectations are relative, right? You know, the Patriots were at the beginning of a dynasty. So I don't know what the expectations were then, but looking back, I think that team probably achieved to its ability. You know, there was a really, really great team. I remember I went to the Pro Bowl after the 2001 season because Donovan McNabb, and I think Kurt Warner both got like chunky soup deals. And I was able to leverage that into sending me to Honolulu for a week because Donovan McNabb was like the biggest thing since, you know, probably Reggie, you know, if Reggie was bigger than Randall, right? So I was like, look, you know, Donovan McNabb, you know, he's going to be all over the place. He's going to have chunky soup commercials, going to be an MVP candidate. The next year, the Eagles sent like 9 guys to the Pro Bowl. And most of those guys were still on that 04 team. So they might send 7 or 8 guys to the Pro Bowl this year. But, you know, the team that I think was the best team that the Eagles have ever had was 2004 because Terrell Owens is on that team. You know, that team was absolutely stacked. You know, John Runyon and Trey Thomas in their prime. That was a really great team. So anyway, Brian Dawkins, you know, in his prime. That was they're Hall of Famers or borderline Hall of Famers on that team. And there are very, very good players and maybe a couple Hall of Famers on this team. But, you know, this was probably the second best team, though. This is probably a better team than 17 and 22. And part of the reason is they have the 2 best receivers in team history, and they have Saquon Barkley, who's the best running back in team history. And they have probably the second or third best iteration of offensive linemen they've ever had. You know, the tight end's not great or healthy. The defense is there are issues on the defense, even though it's playing really, really well. And the head coach isn't as good a coach as I think either Doug or Andy. That may be proven wrong in the future, but you know, that 17 team was pretty special.
The 04 team, now that I'm thinking about it, Brian Westbrook and Dawkins and Owens.
The offensive line was good. You know?
Right. I mean, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay, those three guys just alone
Yeah.
could have a different conversation about whether or not those were the best three guys you've seen on the team. All right. So I've been trying to tell people and temper this here that
Oh,
I
wait,
watched you against
wait. Hold on. And let's remember, Donovan McNabb is still the best quarterback in Eagles history.
He is.
Right? So we talk about those other three guys. The best quarterback they ever had was on that team and went to the Super Bowl. So I think sometimes we take for granted, even now, how good Donovan was for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
And we also forget how bad the quarterbacking has been in this town in general.
Oh my God. All right, here. So I've been trying to tell people this. 1 week against Carolina, I watch you just absolutely fall all over yourselves in the passing game. You turn around, you put up a great performance, and now I will temper it by saying this: December football against the Steelers, you completely dominated such a great coach football team that there's no question. To me, Marcus, that's what you can be or could be. That's not who you are yet, because to me, the defense has built the equity up. 4 months of playing great ball, shutting teams down since the bye. You build that equity up with me. 60 minutes of football doesn't give me equity to go, well, the passing game's fixed. Or do you see it different?
The only complaint I had with the execution of this football team was Jalen Hurts wouldn't throw the football. That's it. What he did on Sunday is he threw the football. And when he was throwing it before, he wasn't throwing it badly. He just wasn't throwing it. Guys were open, guys had advantages, and anytime Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown have one-on-one coverage, that's an advantage. And he wouldn't throw the football. We saw this. We've seen this before with A.J. or with Jalen, but we also used to see it with Donovan. The only guy he was ever really comfortable throwing open, the only two guys he was comfortable throwing open were Terrell Owens and Deshaun Jackson. And he wasn't super comfortable throwing open Jeremy Maclin when Maclin was younger. So, Jalen Hurts wasn't playing badly, and he's to be commended for understanding how important it is for him to secure the football and make sure he first does no harm, the Hippocratic Oath of quarterbacks, first do no harm. But the next step for him was sort of understanding when he can do good. And on Sunday, he did good. He passed the ball well, but more than anything else, he threw the ball to receivers who weren't wide open. And that was Donovan's downfall, and that became Jalen's downfall.
I would say this to you. I heard Brady during the broadcast, and he's going to get better, I think, as a broadcaster. But he said something to me through the eyes of a guy that's won 7 Super Bowls. He goes, Jalen's got to just let it rip and let it go. And sometimes he holds the ball. But you know what I realized? And after Brady said that, it was almost like Kellen Moore had an epiphany. They went up tempo. And when they went up tempo, Tom Brady said this, and it was such a savant comment, he said. And the broadcaster asked Brady, why do they go up tempo? He goes, because it defines the defense earlier, right, and you have your landing parts and your landmarks on pre-snap reads, and it helps you on the fact that Pittsburgh, which is a substitution monster team, they like to substitute on situations. It made it easier for the offense once they went upbeat. Do you think now, Kellen looked at the offense, Marcus, and went, we're going to run the ball. And they won 10 ball games. They said the passing game wasn't good. All of a sudden, they went up tempo in that game. How do you think Kellen Moore has done this year? They are 12-2. They have the number, whatever, in the top 5 in total offense right now. They've utilized their skill sets pretty well. How well do you think he's done at being an offensive coordinator? Not a passing coordinator, but an offensive coordinator.
Well, for me, it's a two-part answer. Early, he did poorly. And I'm not sure why they were so intent on having Jalen run the ball or have the option to run the ball. But it was not working. That was the biggest issue in the offense early, is that there was too much Jalen running the ball or having RPOs or being able to audible to a run himself. what's happened since then is first of all, both receivers came back healthy. So that's a watershed. So maybe that's one of the reasons he was reluctant to, maybe one of the reasons he was more comfortable with Jalen just keeping the ball in his hands. So maybe that's a poor criticism on my part of Kellen. But once the two receivers came back, Devontae and AJ came back healthy, he's been brilliant. These guys have been open. They've had advantages, and one of the things that was remarkable to me, because the way that I watch the game and rewatch the game, I very seldom watch the quarterback or the running back with the ball. I usually watch the left or right guard, which gives you the capacity to see sort of things develop all over the place. These guys were open, and sometimes, when they threw those bubble screens or whatever, Jalen was inaccurate. His feet were bad. But Kellen's done a wonderful job. I think he's done a wonderful job all year. I think all year the issue has been Jalen Hurts / the absence of the two starting wide receivers.
Marcus, I'm going to give you a merit badge here because you said something to me the last time you were on about Nick Sirianni, and I think it kind of came to a head this week. You're like, hey, Dan, just like an A player, you learn things and you learn to become a coach and you learn, through your mistakes. It's funny, on December 17th versus like last year, this time they got beat December 18th of 23, and that was a 3-game losing streak to Seattle. That whole fiasco up in Seattle, that was a different looking team. There was meltdowns. You saw people melting down, both coaching wise, organizationally, player wise. And this week they had a dust up, and yet, I don't know, man. I thought that the influence maybe of Vic Fangio being in that locker room, and maybe even Kellen, when you have more experienced coordinators, and also you've gone through what happened a year ago, I think Nick had a pretty good week last week. I think his team showed up and kicked the hell out of a really good coach football team. I got great respect for Mike Tomlin and what he did. I don't know, man. You think he's growing into the position of being the head coach of the Eagles?
Yes. I think he understands now that my perception of Nick has always been he kind of thinks he has to prove himself all the time. Like he's really ready. He's ready to go. He's ready to go any moment. And he's proud of that, right? Well, you can't be that guy as a head coach of a football team or a CEO of a company, or, the president of a university. You have to understand what matters. And what matters is everyone being as productive as possible, not your feelings, not your ego. Those are the things that have gotten Nick in trouble in the past. It's why he taunted the fans in Kansas City. It's why he taunted the Eagles fans. He wanted to get after Jalen Carter after Jalen Carter took another dumb penalty, and the defensive line coach, which I think was inappropriate, got in between him and Jalen Carter. Now that Nick could have made a really big deal about that. And who knows what happened behind closed doors. Okay. But he didn't in that moment. And I think a year ago he would have. I think 2 months ago he would have. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, completely. Because I know Clint Hurt, and I had a conversation with him 2 nights ago, Marcus, and I agree with you. If a head coach wants to have some sort of conversation with one of his players, the defensive line coach, that's not his place to stop the head coach, because there is a chain of command that you have to know, not only as a player, but also as a coaching staff, that to tell the coach to stay away from, that's inappropriate, especially in public. Now, like you said, I'm sure that was addressed in the past. I kind of get Clint. I recruited Clint for Miami. I know who he is, but I thought that was inappropriate. And I thought he handled that well, man. I really did, because like you said, he could have went absolutely all in on that, and it could have been an even bigger scene on the sidelines. And you're talking about something stupid like you did a week previous, that you're 10 wins in a row and you're 12-2. That's no need for it. I thought he handled it well.
Yeah, I did. I think Nick handled that well, but I think he's handled a lot of things well. He's been pretty diplomatic in talking about, Not only has he been diplomatic in talking about A.J. Brown criticizing Jalen Hurts and the sort of the way things are but he's been pretty honest. He didn't say there's nothing there. That was big for me, because I know, that I know more than I can write and say.
Oh,
right?
yes. Correct.
So when I write or say something that could be construed as disruptive or controversial, there's usually a lot behind it. And this was no different. And I'm not the only one. Like most of the beat writers, most of the columnists know a lot more than we can write and say.
Vic, Clint tells me things that I don't want to put him out there. Right? He tells me things in the conversations he has about his 2 defensive tackles, and I'm like, he goes, hey, and I'm like, if I say that, there goes my relationship with the guy.
Right.
And you got to pick and choose, Marcus, where you're going to go with it.
Whether it's important or not, right?
Yeah.
How important is it? So my litmus test is always does it affect what happens on the field?
Yes.
So that said, Nick did not say there's nothing here. Nick said, number one, we're going to take care of it. Number two, we're going to address the concern, despite, no matter what the relationship is. And number three, we're going to try to get past it as a team and focus on Pittsburgh. And I think we've done that, he said, since Wednesday, right? Whatever. That's a much more mature and believable response than move along, nothing to see here. This guy didn't say this guy didn't mean it that way. The spin of, he was talking about the passing game and not the passer was as much spin as anybody tried to put on it. But even when they did that, they allowed it. They allowed that, yes, Jalen Hurts has not been playing the kind of football that we hope he would play or that he's capable of playing. And even Jalen Hurts said it, So I thought Nick set a really interesting accountability tone last week. And then to your point, and then on the sideline on Sunday, he and Clint got into a situation which I really haven't seen before. And I've been covering the league for 34 years. I've never seen a guy, physically impede a coach from addressing a player who was clearly in the wrong. And by the way, they got that call wrong. The ball had not changed possession. The ball flew by Jalen Carter's head after the second slap. Okay, Absolutely. So possession had not changed. They blew that call, and it should have been a much different outcome. That said, and I think Nick knows that. And I think Nick is like, look, you were a split second from maybe costing us, something more than half the distance to the goal. But to your point, yes, he handled the AJ/Jalen issue maturely and responsibly, and he handled the sideline issue with Clint incredibly responsibly.
What did you make of Brandon Graham going out, and then all of a sudden you had the infamous backstep from the Eagle organization? I got to give Bob Lang a lot of credit, man. He knows how to, those guys that put on the hazmat suits and they go in and they clean up when there's a toxic spill at 3 Mile Island.
Well, you go in there and
clean it up.
We call him Mr. Wolf. Remember Mr. Wolf from
yes.
From what was that movie?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. He's Mr. Wolf sometimes, yes.
Yeah, he goes in there and he was cleaning this whole thing up, and I'm going, always remember, go with the emotion, not go with the script. Always go with the emotion in sports. And what did you make of him? Because I look at it now after the fact and go, maybe he did him a favor instead of allowing what happened a year ago where nobody said anything. And you got to Tampa, and you shouldn't even have gotten off the bus against the Bucks because you got run out of the building. Maybe in so many ways, this thing was the best thing to ever happen to them, that they addressed something that they needed to address. Because, like you said, Marcus, you're not going to win a Super Bowl if you don't have balance. You have to throw the ball. You just can't be a 1925 offense or have Bryson Daly come in and be your quarterback. You can't have the Army offense and win a Super Bowl. So maybe he did him a favor.
Well, let's think about it this way. What if Brandon Graham had said nothing? What if it didn't exist? What's the fallout from just what AJ and Jalen said? I don't think it's a whole lot different.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's a whole lot. I think it's maybe less magnified nationally. So now we're in the reality where Brandon says what he said. Okay. Nobody believes that Brandon is wrong. Nobody believes Brandon has a misperception. Nobody believes that there wasn't an issue, that the relationship between Jalen and AJ hasn't changed. They've both admitted that it changed. Doesn't mean they're enemies. It doesn't mean they don't eat lunch. My favorite thing about the whole week, Nick Sirianni talking about, no, these guys are good. I see them eat lunch together every day. Like it's seventh grade. You know what I mean? Like who's at whose lunch table matters. Of course they're going to eat lunch. It's not like they're enemies, and it's not like they're going to ignore each other. But, that doesn't mean A.J. Brown can't have issue with Jalen Hurts not throwing the ball into uncomfortable situations and having uncomfortable conversations with him. Like, I feel bad for Brandon because the perception is he made it bigger, okay? The reality is I think he just said what we all assumed anyway and kind of what they talked about. Yes, our relationship has changed. Everybody's relationship changes. Guy, when you know this better than most people doing your job or mine. When you join the team of a friend, when you'd go to work with or for a friend, if you move into the neighborhood of a friend, your relationship dynamic changes. Now that guy's not putting his garbage out, or he's not, he's leaving the leaves on his yard. Now that guy's not throwing me the ball. Now that guy's, getting coffee for the rest of the office, but not me, or saying this behind their back, or I know he's skipping out to play golf or whatever. Relationships evolve and change, and this one does too. And very seldom do they change for the better. Very seldom do you get closer when you live with someone, right? So I got kind of a kick out of the Brandon Graham. I actually talked to him Sunday after the game about it, and I teased him. And I went over to him. I said, "You just can't help telling the truth, can you?" And he went into Jeffrey Lurie's office.
Oh my God!
Howie Roseman actually came over and called him into the office where Jeffrey Lurie was meeting with Nick Sirianni.
I got it. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, well, you have your favorite person or your favorite girlfriend, and you've been doing it for a couple of years with each other, going out to dinner, going to movies, you're having dinners, you're out there with AJ having a fun time, and all of a sudden a new guy comes in, and there you have Saquon Barkley, and everyone's like, wait a minute, Barkley's over here now. He's my new affection here. Well, wait, what about me over here? I felt this was an ego thing, that it came down to, wait a minute here. I want this football team to win, but I want it to win my way, not Barkley's way and that way. And that's how I took it. Was I wrong in how I looked at that?
I didn't see it that way. You're not the only person who said that, but I didn't see it that way. This is how I see it. And it's very football centric, very football specific. Okay. Football players in general, especially wide receivers, have a very, very small window in which to make a case for themselves to be great and Hall of Fame worthy. A.J. Brown has had 1,400 receiving yards the last 2 years. He's not going to have that this year. He missed 3 games, but he's not going to come close, in part because Jalen Hurts won't throw him the ball. Also, Saquon Barkley exists, and he missed 3 games. But this guy is the best receiver in Eagles history, except for the 2004 season Terrell Owens had. He's doing it in a huge East Coast football market on a great team, and his window is small.
Yeah.
He's got maybe 2 or 3 more years of greatness. Now, I'm not saying he's out of the league in 2 or 3 years, and he has busted his butt to be great. He does every single thing well. He shows up for mini camps. He's a leader. He's in great shape. He teaches the other guy. He teaches the – remember we thought 2 years ago might be a little conflict, right? No, He's embraced the other guy. A.J. Brown has done every single thing right, but he wants to maximize his window. And I don't think that's selfish as long as he is still a viable option. I don't think it's particularly selfish of him to say, I've done all I'm supposed to do. Now give me my chance to fail.
2 last ones here for you, and this one goes to Barkley. I think the guy really, but outside of his phenomenal talent, and I compare him to Steph Curry, and I compare him to a guy, where you look at a person like, let's say Steph Curry did this when they brought in Kevin Durant. I remember personally when he said it, he goes, hey, this is going to be KD's team. This is KD. We need him to win against LeBron. And to me, that's always a sign, like Dwayne Wade, when LeBron went down there, hey, this is going to be LeBron's team. That's a sign of leadership to me, that Steph Curry always was a leader of that team. Dwayne Wade was always the leader of that Miami Heat team. But those guys knew that you had to manage egos for them to go where they wanted to go. Barkley was the only guy last week, Marcus, that didn't say a word, and it was all about him and all the things and all the publicity and the MVP talk and the 2105 and all of that. He sat back and didn't say anything. I was so impressed with him, and I have been impressed with him as an Eagle more so than I ever have been when he was a Giant. I mean, have you been impressed with him on and off the field? I mean, he looks himself as great as any NFL guy, superstar player I have ever seen, because he could have went, wait a minute here, we're winning. Feed me the ball. I want 25 carries. I want that 2105. It doesn't seem to be his nature, though, and I think he's been an absolute perfect fit for that organization, and I didn't know how it was going to look.
He's very similar to AJ in that he knows he is different. We use the word special a lot, and he is. And he's very interested in finding out what his limitations are. He's very interested in finding out how great he can be. He told us this. He said, I want to be mentioned in the same breath as, Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith and all these guys, right? At the beginning of the year. The difference between him and Steph, him and AJ, him and Dwayne Wade, is that Steph, AJ, Dwayne Wade, whoever, they still self-promote.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley doesn't bother. Saquon Barkley can't wait to the next practice. He can't wait to the next handoff. He can't wait for the next play. And if he's great, he knows he's going to be included in all of those things. Now, you said you were more impressed with him as an Eagle than a Giant.
Yeah.
I'm much more impressed with him as a Giant.
Because of what they did
now. He used to be better. He used to be better than he is now. He was younger. He wasn't repaired. He wasn't injured twice. And he never made a peep. In the New York media.
True.
Playing 90 miles from home.
Yep.
Never made a peep. It's just astonishing how mature, professional, composed, and great, all of those things he is, and there's a rule in the NFL. You can't take your helmet off on the field because Emmitt Smith did it all the time because he wanted to promote himself. Walter Payton and Barry Sanders in my lifetime have been the two most professional, great football players I've been around. Completely devoid of self-promotion, ego, whatever. And I'm not saying it's bad for any of the others to do whatever they do. It's just who they are. To me, that's impressive. And Saquon is the next one like that, And I Derrick Henry might be like that. I'm not as familiar with him as maybe I should be. But yeah, it's been just, who else was like that? Troy Aikman.
Yeah.
Troy Aikman was, he wasn't Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't as talented as some of the guys, but his accomplishments are amazing. And both as a broadcaster and as a football player, he's never been a me guy whatsoever. So, yeah, Saquon has been, an absolute joy. And I haven't had much interaction with him, but he's been an absolute joy to be around. And he's been a spectacular influence really on everybody, including Jalen and Nick.
Man, my first game in the NFL was against Walter Payton in '87. Was his last at Tampa Stadium, old Tampa Stadium. And I had to go over because when I was a kid, I watched him go for 275 against the Vikings with the flu when I was with my grandpa, and I ran across and I shook his hand and I said, Walter, I had to meet you. And he goes, oh, no, man. Oh, this and that. And it's great to meet you. And you're like, that can't be Walter Payton. I mean, I thought the guy was going to have some psychotic. And then years later, his son, Jared, would go to Miami and they helped run that Walter Payton Man of the Year thing. And so,
Right.
I mean, I got a chance to know the family a lot, and Eddie, his brother, and you're dead on, man. Walter Payton, you would swear was not that guy, but when you watch him on the field, this guy looked to knock people out. I mean, he was just a special football player here.
Well,
So
some guys love to play. Some guys
Yeah.
love.
he had
A lot of
passion
guys
for the
hate.
game.
A lot of guys only play because they have to. Some guys love to play. Brandon Graham loves to play football. AJ Brown loves to play football. I think Jalen Hurts loves to play football. But I've never met there's never been an Eagle that I've met who loves to play football, who is really, really good at it more than Saquon Barkley. And that's what he is. He's a football player.
Last question. The Eagles' best team in pro football?
Yeah.
Is it close? Number 2?
Before Detroit's injury, I think they've got 13 or 14 guys on IR right now. And I think maybe 6 of them are significant defensive players.
They lose Montgomery this past Sunday. So, I mean, he's
Yeah.
significant in their backfield.
So, yeah, I mean, Kansas City has never been that good. They've been good, but they haven't been that good. The Bills have been flawed and are flawed. I will say, and I covered Sean as a coaching intern, I think, Sean McDermott. I think both he and Dan Campbell are not great head coaches. I think that like Andy makes the Chiefs much better than Sean and Dan Campbell make their teams. And that's not to, pump up Nick Sirianni, but I think he has the most talented team. And I think he's just as good a coach as either one of them, if not better. But I'm not saying that's a super high bar. So to answer your question, there's really no box that the Eagles don't tick that would make you think that any other team is appreciably better than them. And really, there's only 3 teams in the running, right? Well, maybe 4 if you think the Vikings are for real. But I would love, I don't know how badly this defense would mangle Sam Darnold's efforts, but I'm pretty sure it'd be pretty significant. So if the 3 other teams you're talking about are the Bills, the Lions, and the Chiefs, I right now, given, who they are and what their personnel is, I can't say that there's a team better than them. And I can't really say there's a team within 5% of them. That's 95% as good.
See, what I tell folks is this. Remember in 2017, you lost a star left tackle. You lost a MVP candidate at quarterback. You lost a linebacker, if I'm not mistaken, on that 2017 team. And you basically beat Belichick and Brady with backups.
Yeah.
In that Super Bowl to win that game. So a team like the Vikings, and again, I'm with you. Sam Darnold, from the start of the season to right now, has completely outplayed Hurts as a starting quarterback. And he's a journeyman that's been on 4 teams. And Kevin O'Connell and the other guy, Brian Flores, have done a spectacular. I'm not saying that the Eagles are in that or the Vikings are in the Eagles room, but I don't know what they are because it just looks like a longer version of Nick Foles going on there in Minneapolis, because this has been not just a 3-game stretch. It's been an entire year. I mean, Marcus, it could go like this. They could go to the end of the season, win out. I know they got a hard schedule these last 3 games here, and so does Detroit. But if they win out, it's irrelevant what Philly does, because that last game of the year between Detroit and Minnesota is for home field. And you could have a 5-seed 15-2 Eagle team playing Washington, or maybe even the Bucks, which would be a nightmare, going to Tampa again and playing them in the opening round of the wild card. So, I mean, that Minnesota game, they went 12-2 last night. I mean, it's kind of interesting where this race is right now.
Yeah, I really look forward to that Lions-Vikings game. I wish I could say I was looking forward to it for months, but it's only been a couple of weeks. It popped up on my radar. And honestly, I didn't think Detroit would be where they are. I thought they'd have another loss at this point, but And I think that, that's the other thing. What Detroit is going forward after these latest 3 injuries might be the breaking point, right? Which I feel bad for Detroit, the city, and the franchise, because they've had so many misfortunes and shot themselves in the foot a few times, but have had so many misfortunes over the last 30 years or so, maybe more. But yeah, that'll be a great game to, sort of watch. And the fascinating thing to me is, like, on the other side of the docket, I know it doesn't matter for the Eagles and their bye situation, but if Patrick Mahomes misses a game or two, Carson Wentz is the person who either makes or breaks Andy Reid's, trip for, drive for 3 in a row. Of all the storylines in football going down the stretch,
don't say it.
Carson Wentz and Andy Reid might be the number one storyline in football for the next 3 weeks. He's going to replace the best player in football with the biggest, like, post second year bust in recent memory. Like, it boggles. It's like Ben Simmons having to replace Steph Curry, for Steve Kerr to win 3 in a row,
So wait a minute. Carson Wentz versus Jalen Hurts in New Orleans. You're not ticking on that, are you?
Because Patrick never comes back from these ankle. Like, he comes back, but he's not whole. He keeps re-injuring it, right? And you got to wonder, like, how long, how many times can you ding it, and how bad is it going to be this time? And, people are going to be aiming for it. People are going to be targeting it. There is a reality. There is a world in New Orleans where, it's Carson Wentz against Jalen Hurts.
Marcus,
Carson Wentz and Andy Reid against Jalen Hurts and Jeffrey Lurie.
Unbelievable, man. So, hey, I leave you with this, though. You're not being anyway punished anyway covering the Sixers right now, are you?
Oh, no. I actually went back. I don't cover the Sixers much this time of year between the Eagles and, like, right now I'm actually on, like, forced vacation. I use it or lose it vacation this week. So I don't get to the Sixers much in November and December. And, but it was important for me to go back to, I've been to a practice, a game, a shoot around, which is my normal, sort of, what do you call it? Course of action, my normal schedule, my normal routine. And they, from the person who lets you in the lot to the general manager, president, everybody's been very, very professional. The players, the coaches, whatever. So yeah, my incident with Joel Embiid seems to have, either blown over or maybe wasn't that big a deal with them. I haven't been around or spoken to Joel, but he's been hurt. So it just hasn't happened.
He's been hurt, really? Okay, well, I'll leave it there on that one, okay? I'll just leave it there. It is always great catching up with you. Thank you so much, my friend, for all your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marcus. Make sure you guys check him out at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thank you, my friend.
All right. Thanks for having me, Dan.
You bet. Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer. That's fantastic stuff. Guys, please do me a favor and hit the like button here. We'll reset everything here. Big Sills here, and we are teamed up with our friends at BetUS. You got it, my friends. Make sure you check out our friends at BetUS on the website for the YouTube 150. That's right. We have teamed up with our partners for you to be able to have yourself a betting house this year, for you to make all of your bets with BetUS. Now, again, 150% on the sign-up bonus up to $2K. Your second and third are 125% of your 2K signing bonus. Don't forget, if you're into crypto also, 200% up to the $2,000K when it comes to your signing bonus. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Fastest payouts in the business. 24/7 personalized service, 365 days of the year. Live wagering on all major games. Home of Michael Vick. That's betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. And do me a favor, tell them Big Sil sent you.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.